Hello, 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 everyone. I'm Natalie Mack. I'm the founder of Military Homeschoolers Association. We are excited to be here today. We are going to be talking about you picked your homeschool curriculum. Now it's time to get organized, confident, and connected. Hopefully, you were able to join us in June when we had our first webinar, and this is a continuation of that. In June, we did Getting Started Homeschooling, Military Homeschool Edition. And this is a follow up to that. And if you did not get to tune in, there is a replay. So go to our YouTube channel, which is Military Homeschoolers Association. You will be able to listen to that replay. So here we are today. We're excited. And I'm going to go ahead and just say why this is important. So, piggybacking on getting started homeschooling, let's assume that you are beginning to homeschool. And even maybe you've already been homeschooling and you're just tweaking things, you changed things up. Maybe you even changed homeschool curriculum. Or maybe you, like me, every year it's time to get organized just a little better, right? To make things just a little easier. Either way, this webinar is for you. And so once you pick that curriculum out, it's time to figure it out now, right? Like, what do I do with it? How do I get it organized? What things do I need to pre-prepare so that every day goes a little bit more smoothly? And we know in our homeschooling world, things don't always go smoothly. And so life does happen. That's okay. Breathe, relax, and just get yourself together and start all over again. It's really not that critical. And so we are going to talk about this, about getting organized and about building confidence and about getting established in community today. I have two amazing board members joining me today, and I want to introduce you first to the amazing Jessica Edwards. She is our homeschool
Hi.
support facilitator, and you saw her if you watched last time. She is an amazing military spouse for 15 years and homeschool mom of 5. And so she's no stranger to living our life. And all of our board members are connected, either still active or retired. And so she fits right in. She even was a military brat. Dad served 20 years in the United States Navy, so go Navy. And so we're excited to have her here. She is the one who is creating this amazing content and the webinars and all the things to help you homeschool more effectively. I don't want to say better because that's relative, but to a place where you feel confident. And so we're really excited about having Jessica with us today. And so the next person that we have on is Miss Ashley Barta. She is our Special Education Program Director for Military Homeschoolers Association. She brings, oh gosh, over a decade, y'all. That's 10, right? Over 10 of experience in education, specializing in special education, curriculum development, and educational technology. And she has several degrees behind her name, and she's fully prepared to talk and help our special needs families. And so these are who you have today, and we're going to get started. I'm going to go ahead and segue over and turn it over to Jessica, who's going to talk about getting organized, tools and systems that work.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm so excited to do part 2 tonight. So like you said, we did part 1 in June, and now we're talking about the meat and potatoes, right? You pick the curriculum. That's a huge step. But now you might be wondering, how do I actually fit all this into my day without losing my mind and actually still like living my life? So if you go back or if you've watched our webinar from June, we talked a lot about a rhythm versus a schedule. So, and I'm intentionally not saying schedule because our homeschool life doesn't fit into a typical 9 to 3. Okay, it doesn't have to, and that's the beauty of it. Right. So a rhythm will give you flexibility without that rigidness, and it promotes the sustainability that we want, something that works for your family. So start by looking at what your curriculum actually requires. Are there daily lessons, weekly projects? How long does a typical lesson take? And that may take a little while to figure out, and that's okay. Look at that and then tailor your rhythm around that. Okay. Realistically, how many days per week do you want to homeschool? Some families do 4 days a week so that they have a day to tackle life things like appointments and errands and all of that. Others spread things out. Remember, you're not trying to recreate school at home. You're building something that fits your life. So whatever that is, that works for you, and that's great. So a simple method I like to suggest is to pick your anchor points. Okay. So when my son was little, that was quiet time after lunch. It was necessary. Also outside time. As we're getting older, our anchor points are sports and music lessons and different things. Those are non-negotiables. Those are very rigid, but we can be flexible around that. And look at the bookends for your day. When do you want to wrap this up? What do you want to wrap it up by doing? Something creative, something winding down, or do you save maybe some of your difficult work for later when you can give your full attention? So it can look as simple as time blocks. Like mornings, you may do math and reading. You may save science and history for the afternoons, or do hands on projects or outdoor time or independent work in the afternoons. Or you may be completely done by lunch. It just depends on the age of your child and what your schedule looks like, or your routine, right? Your rhythm. Uh,
Mhm.
and I also suggest leaving a room for a margin, because you're going to have sick days. You're going to have rough mornings. Maybe there's fun. It's beautiful after 2 weeks of rain and you want to make it an outside day. So
Right.
life happens. Definitely think about your rhythm and leaving margin for stuff that pops up so you don't have to live by a standard that maybe you don't want to anymore.
Mhm.
That day.
Mhm.
Uh, Now, so once you have your rhythm down, and like I said, there's really no rush. If this is your first year of homeschooling, take a month to kind of figure that out, and realistically map out how long it takes you to complete work. But after you do that, let's talk materials. Keeping things organized, especially if you're juggling multiple kids, saves so much energy in the long run. So here are a few strategies that I like. Work bins or boxes. Okay, so each child
Mhm.
has their current journals, their books, tools. They're easy to grab. They're all in one place. I personally use a rolling cart for all my curriculum, all my manipulative, all the pencils, everything. So school stuff is at one place, but that's going to look different in your home. Maybe you have a great homeschool room, and that's awesome. We homeschool in our dining room. Daily folders. So some parents prep folders or clipboards on what needs to be done that day. Google Classroom has also just been introduced to me. I'm not super tech savvy, but if you have an older child or a child that works well independently, you can also load assignments in
Mhm.
here, and that's a great tool. Um, Going back to having it all in one bin, a supply caddy. So having all of that all in one place is really handy. So you're not thrown off track by trying to find the tape or the scissors. Um, and also digital organization. So you can create folders by subjects, or again, Google Classroom or Google Drive. You can label your items in there, but if you are going to use digital organization, I do suggest a backup,
Mhm.
because anybody that's lost work like that knows how devastating that can be. So just make sure you have a backup. Now, the third thing I want to talk about is tracking. So
Mhm.
this is going to vary between states. So take all this and compare it with your state regulations, because obviously that is what you need to go by. But even if your state doesn't require detailed records, it helps you stay on track and see growth. And also, as military spouses, just because one state doesn't require detailed records does not necessarily mean the next one won't. And I've kind of always tried to keep my records fairly detailed because of that, but that's just a personal choice. I like to use a checklist or a planner, really. I use like a basic student planner. It tracks my days and it also tracks what we did each day. So it kind of is a two-in-one because in my state, we have to show how many days that we school.
Mhm.
I also include 90 and 100-day summaries as well as work records. Or otherwise known as your portfolio. So some states you'll have to have documentations, a few samples of work. So that would be like the beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year. And this isn't necessarily to prove that you schooled that whole time. That's a whole different other matter. But this is just to show progression and growth of your student, of your child. So that's what that portfolio is for.
Mhm.
Now, so time management for real life. Again, if you're homeschooling multiple kids or working or just trying to achieve balance, you're not alone. Like we're all trying to do it. Uh, what I like to do is I like to stagger independent work. So if you have multiple kids, one child does their math and maybe you're assisting another one doing their reading or handwriting. As my own child gets older, I do the parent led subjects first. And then I have selected online programs for subjects that he can handle more independently. And that works great for us. But our strategy for that has changed a little bit every year as he's gotten older. And another really big thing for us that's helped us is a visual schedule. My son, again, we don't follow a rigid schedule, but for him to know, hey, these things need to be done on Tuesday gives him the reminder without mom or dad being like, hey, have you done your math yet? We need to do reading. He has some ownership on when he's getting started with that on a Tuesday. Or so for us that's helped and it's kind of taken some of the power struggles out of our daily schedule. So that's
Mhm.
helped us. Yeah.
That is super awesome. I love all the examples that you gave and how you said, this is what's working for you, right? And so I'm sure some of our viewers say, well, this is what I do, and this works for me. Or some may identify and say, yeah, I'm a checklist person, I'm a planner person. And so just I think hearing the options and realizing you have the freedom as a homeschooling parent to choose what works. And what works now may not work in the next season. It may not
Absolutely.
work when your kids get older. It may not work when you get older, right? You may need to actually figure out something different. So this is all just tips that hopefully will be helpful for you to be able to get a little bit more organized. So that was all tools and systems, and that was awesome, Jessica. Thank you so much. We're gonna segue, and also I meant to say, if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments of wherever you're watching. We are live streaming on YouTube, my LinkedIn account right now, as well as on our Facebook page, Military Homeschoolers Association. So we're going to segue to Ashley, and she's going to talk about building confidence, mindset, motivation, and flexibility. All right, Ashley.
Those are some big shoes to fill after Jessica. My goodness, this is awesome stuff. You know, SPED kind of falls right into that flexibility of the joys of being a homeschooler, right?
Right.
I guess the three big things I wanted to talk about was figuring out what your kiddo's learning style is. And if you have, well, any of us, right? Like we're
Right.
all gonna figure out our kiddo's own unique learning styles, and we can hone in on those as homeschoolers. But when you
Mhm.
have a child with complex learning needs, you're gonna really hone in on those because our curriculum does not look like the standard box curriculum. I have tried and tried and tried, and I usually check it before the end of the month of the first month of
Yeah.
homeschooling. Oh my goodness. Um, so for in my I guess my experience, what I have done is I love to do 5 goals at the beginning of the year. And a lot of the times it's it's things that we know we need to work on if we're working with an occupational therapist, speech therapist, physical therapist, but we're looking at points that we want to hit as well in development. You're figuring out what works for your family. So for a medically complex kiddo, that might mean, looking at those anchor points of not a sport or a co-op, so to speak, like Jessica said, but looking at a therapy anchor point. So therapy days might be Mondays and Wednesdays. So you're looking at doing school on the other days because they're going to be tanked on therapy days. But you're also looking at your family as well. We still do a lot of around the table group studies because it works for us. And because we have a nonverbal, non-reading child with other kids in our family, we do a lot of read alouds. So while that works for a typical kiddo, it also works for a non-typical kiddo. And sometimes chapter books, while some kiddos need to be bouncing on a trampoline behind you while you're reading, some kids love to cuddle in a weighted blanket. So looking at those learning styles or tweaking what your kid needs and using it that way, I think is really great. I guess, and then that kind of segues right into modifying your curriculum as well. So you're modifying it, right? But you're not looking at a box curriculum. So if your child, Good and the Beautiful, I guess, is one, they do the family centered, you have your levels, but you can pick and choose. So science curriculums, we do a lot of pictures for my nonverbal child where we do, and then hands-on experiments where we're not going to do a chemistry experiment with a child with low mobility because of the dangers, but you're modifying that. He might be able to participate and look, but he's definitely not going to participate in that way. You're also going to take a look at their IEPs. So some homeschoolers use IEPs and some homeschoolers don't. If you're segueing from public school to homeschool, you're probably going to have an IEP to follow. But a lot of us that have homeschooled since the beginning kind of create our own IEP with those goals in mind. Gosh, I think I'm jumping all over the place because it's just all kind of encompassing.
Yeah. No,
and you're not going to do grade level curriculum as well. I think with in the SPED realm, you're going to choose what works. And I guess as homeschoolers as well, we do a level versus a grade. And my daughter actually used to be like, wow, what grade is this? But it's at your level. It's fine. So I think that's the thing is be open to modifying the curriculum. The curriculum is not the master. You are the master of your homeschool. And I love to say that because it's just a guide, right? Like we have a spine or we have a guide, but we don't let it rule our life. And with a medically complex kiddo, you are going to take sick days or there's going to be hospital stays, and you can't feel guilty for not getting through that curriculum because you're in the hospital for the week. But a good friend of mine said, along with the curriculum is not the master, she said, think about what you've done during the day. You might not have followed that curriculum, but you washed dishes. So now they're standing and attending. You went to the park. So now we've gotten some gross motor, some small motor, following directions, communication, all of those things. And that kind of led me to, instead of, yes, we make a good plan at the beginning, but we reverse plan in our house. So if you're reverse planning, you still have your planner, but instead of writing what you want to accomplish, you're writing what you did accomplish. And I think that changed my mindset as a special needs parent because I was so worried about what we weren't doing, what we weren't achieving, what we weren't on grade level. And then if you look back, that is, then you're seeing what you've done good, what you could improve on. And I guess that was my third point. See, look at this. I'm just going right into it, is what progress looks like. Because progress, you're not doing testing. You're not doing a post-test, a pre-test, a chapter test with a special needs kiddo. You're looking at their progress. If they've progressed through the school year, you've done your job. If they've regressed, well, then what can we change? And then you're working really closely with those other people in your group, your PTs, your OTs, your speeches, your, other therapists, ABA, those things. I just call them our Wonder Team. I think I have our team set as a chat group as like the Wonder Team, because we're all in those different, those pieces. But if you're reverse planning and you're looking at the progress over perfection, you're doing all of those things without even really knowing that you're doing them. I also keep a portfolio. So we have binders for every year that we've kept, but we keep for my son, we have a art notebook. It's just a drawing notebook. I think I've picked up, I think I get them at Target. But every day we try to do something, whether it's stickers, whether it's do-a-dots, whether it's practicing our name, our counting, those types of things. And he has books from every year that he's done school. So now we can look back and say, oh, look at how he colored in the picture 2 years ago. Right. But now he maybe can't color in the picture. Okay, so now we can address that. Or look at how the progression has gone in a good way. Now we don't have to worry about that as a goal. Now we can create 5 more new goals. So I think that's, just to create those different mindsets in your homeschool, as you're not, like I think Jessica said, we're not classroom teaching, we're homeschooling. So it looks so completely different. We've also homeschooled with a beautiful homeschool classroom. Bouncy chairs, a swing, an activity table, art center, and then the military, of course, sends us to somewhere where we're homeschooling around the dining room table because we just don't have any room. So I think I don't know. I think all of us homeschoolers in the military have learned to adapt. So that's part of our nature. So if we can just adapt into our homeschool plan, we're going to look at the progress over anything, because even though we're moving, we're constantly evolving and changing. I don't think any homeschool year has looked the same for us ever.
I love that. Because like you said, as military families, we can have our expectations of what we would love for it to look like, the ideal, right? And then we have the reality. And I think we get more and more comfortable just dealing with the reality. And so when you were talking about what progress looks like for children that are neurodivergent, and then rethinking those benchmarks, like the expectation that you may have as a parent, that maybe how you were schooled or what school looked like or what you think school should look like, and then what is the reality. And that's where the freedom, I think, is in homeschooling, is living in that reality, knowing that you have the flexibility to work on different things as needed, and you're not trying to keep up, right? You're not trying to measure up to a traditional benchmark. You're just trying to see, has there been progress? Look at the binder if you keep a binder, like you mentioned, and look and see, right? What was coloring like? And now what is it like? What was printing like? All the things. And so that's the benchmark. Those are the benchmarks, the homeschool benchmarks, right? Not traditional ones. So how do you do that? Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as homeschoolers, or as caregivers to our kiddos, we're constantly trying to not keep up with the Joneses, but we're trying to keep up with that amazing homeschooler you've met. And I think that you're going to just constantly be running on that hamster wheel of trying to achieve somebody else's homeschool. and it's
Right.
no homeschool looks the same.
Yeah.
And I think that's, that's everybody that I've talked to that has burnout, or they're not doing a good job, and I can't do this, I'm just sending them to public school, or those types of things. And I think that's the key, is taking what we're good at, taking those strengths,
Mhm.
and building on those. And whether you have a neurodivergent kiddo or a typical kiddo, it
Mhm.
kind of all goes into that, like, whole realm of taking care of your family first. And that was the biggest thing for me, is reverse planning,
I love
keeping
that.
those goals in mind, but reverse planning, so it's more of a reflection on what we've done. And because as a past public school teacher, I really wanted to hold on to that box curriculum.
Mhm.
Oh my
Mhm.
goodness, I wanted to
Mhm.
hold on to that
Mhm.
so hard and so strong. And and I just, with a kiddo that isn't doing chemistry and in history at a 10th grade level, you can
Mhm.
really beat yourself up. And
Mhm.
that was just one thing that stuck
Mhm.
with me, was, nope, this is ours. This is our world, and this is one of the reasons I chose to homeschool. And being flexible. You do not need a schedule to, I mean, some kids do, right? Like, we all
Yeah.
need good
Yeah.
schedules, and maybe not even a schedule. It's a routine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Jessica was saying. Yeah. Just, yeah. So I love what you said also about and it resonated with me how we can look at another like homeschooler and we can fangirl her, right? We can like, oh, I want to be like so and so at co-op. They have everything all together, no snotty nose kids, everything's completely right, straight and all, and you're stressing, right? And it's like there's one thing for looking and making an honest assessment and maybe saying these are some things I want to work on, right? That's fine. I think that's good. But if those are the benchmarks and those are like something that is causing you to get frustrated, depressed, sad, or feel as if less than, then something that's not good, right? And so I always also say is don't look over into anyone else's homeschool backyard because that grass is going to always be cut. It's always going to be looking really green, right? Well, not always. Sometimes you can see real struggles that people are having, right? But in general, we can do that to ourselves as homeschool moms. We feel like we have to measure up. So I love about what you were saying about that. And that's part of preventing burnout, like you were saying. It's like we can burn our own selves out, right?
Yep.
It's not necessarily our kids, it's we as homeschool moms, right? And dads that homeschool too, right? So that's good. I love it. So
I
yes.
Yeah.
think that
I
Yeah,
love that you
everybody.
mentioned,
Oh,
yeah,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
Ashley, but I love that
okay.
you mentioned,
No.
Natalie, about like looking over the fence, right?
Yeah.
Because it can get really overwhelming, especially social media. I feel like that has really changed the landscape. We are just being flooded with all these curated
Yeah.
photos of what homeschool looks like.
Yes.
And it can really make you feel like you're failing.
Yes.
My homeschool setting will never be a curated photo. That's just
Yes.
not how I live life.
Yes. Yes.
But I love that. But it can also feel like, man, I wish, like you said, it can be a goal, right? Like I would like to be more spontaneous or more artistic or more go with the flow.
Right.
Because those are not my strong points.
Uh-huh.
Mine are definitely more on like the organized side of things, and that's
Uh-huh.
okay. But yes, I think I just wanted to add that it's like it's not so much about like what it looks like, but what does it feel like? And you can take a pulse point if you start to feel overwhelmed. Like, what is the home environment for you? Are you
Right.
feeling connected to your kid? Is it a power struggle every day?
Yeah.
Really hone in on what the struggles you're having, or the
Mhm.
family climate, because maybe the best thing that you can do is take a day and
Yeah.
just be and reconnect with your child or your children and do something that speaks to their love language or their favorite things, because that can really change
Mm-hmm.
your environment and your
Mm-hmm.
flow. And it maybe it's not your curriculum or how you're leading your homeschool. Maybe you just need to reconnect with them for a second and reset. Maybe you just need a day, like a mental health day, right? Everyone
Right.
needs them every once in a while. So
Yes. Yes. Love it. Ashley, you were going to say something too.
I was just going to kind of, build on that and just say, I think as military spouses and homeschoolers, a lot of us do not do a lot of self-care, and we don't get breaks the way we should. And that's just part
Amen
of
to that. Amen to that.
that's just, I think, part of the job, right? Like we know, and sometimes there's seasons where we have a deployment or things like that where we are the only one. And I think if we fall into that comparison trap, or you're trying to achieve greatness in your homeschool because Mary down the road has this picture perfect homeschool that you want, and that's just not your life, I think that creates burnout faster than we even realize. And so for me, as a sped mom, a medically complex kiddo, and regular typical kiddos in our home, we have a mix of both. And so we don't always get to have a break away from our kids. And so if you take a mental health day, like Jessica said, you have to remember there's kids that also need that mental health day. And it's okay to just not burn the textbook, but slam that closed and say, we're having a picnic outside and we are going for a hike, and or we're just going to go to the bookstore because that's what we need today. So I don't think that there's a magic sauce or a magic equation to prevent burnout or things like that. But I think that's where you need to say, this is what we need in our day to day, or reflect at the end and just say, okay, we did not get math done today, but guess what? We baked cookies and we doubled the recipe, and there's math. Boom.
It came out perfectly. They weren't too flat or too thick. They were just perfect.
Exactly.
I love that. I love that. One thing I was thinking about too is this idea of deschooling. So a lot of families we know are beginning to homeschool. And we know that the statistics have shown us that military families are homeschooling at double the national average. And so a couple of the groups that I moderate outside of MHA, it's amazing, the families that are coming in saying we want to begin homeschooling. We are withdrawing from the local public school. We are withdrawing from DODEA, or what you call DOD schools. We're withdrawing from private school, and we just aren't satisfied. So I just want to make sure families understand the value of what's called deschooling, which is basically just kind of realizing that how you envision school is mainly based, one, on how you were taught, like what was your school environment, right? And then secondly, realizing that how your kids have been taught prior to pulling them out is not the way that you have to continue homeschooling, right? You don't have to step into homeschooling doing it either way, right? And so, it's hard to disengage ourselves, right, from how we were schooled, but we can make the effort to realize that we don't need to school, we don't need to homeschool that way, and we definitely can transition our kids to another way. And so there's a big difference also between homeschooling and as a lifestyle versus an academic choice. And I've had this discussion a lot, and I know a lot of families will say, well, we're homeschooling as an academic choice because we had to pull out of that brick and mortar location. I get that. So eventually, though, try to segue to a lifestyle. I think that's where the fun is. That's where the fruit is. That's where less burnout resides, is in the lifestyle. Like baking cookies, that's a science, right? I mean, you're not baking cookies every day. I'm not saying that you bake cookies every day and you call it science. But I'm saying you can decide that today we're baking cookies for science, right? And no one can step in and say, well, you're doing it wrong. And so I think we need to look at those kinds of things and really understand the value that we can gain by just kind of reassessing our box that we live in and realizing we can step out of the box. So I just think that's super important, and just hopefully it's helpful for families as we're unpacking this. This is a great conversation. I wish I had had this conversation when I was like just beginning to homeschool, right? But hey, here we are, and so hopefully it's benefiting our families. So I'm going to go on to getting connected, unless you all have something. Anything want to roll on to the next step? I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think that fits in right in what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So getting connected is what I'm going to talk about, building your homeschool village. So why does connection matter? Oh gosh, for military families. Well, because we are constantly having to find community. Like we don't keep an established community. Now, I know there are certain like EFMP categories that don't relocate. I get it. And not even if you're not EFMP, your sponsor, right? Your active duty member may be in a situation where they just kind of have been in place for years. You might be saying, I want to move, please move me. And the military is keeping you in place. I get that. So maybe you haven't had to reestablish community. But most military families that are active duty have had to reestablish communities, right? And so connection matters because it can help you have a sense of somebody's doing this homeschool thing with me. I'm not just out here by myself. There are other people that are living the similar life, right? And it matters also for our kids. I was talking to someone recently and I was saying that you have introverts and extroverts, and we need both in the world. I do believe that. I'm totally on the extroverted side, but I have come to appreciate the introverts and love them dearly. And so what I was saying recently to another mom is, and she was saying, I'm comfortable being at home. Like I don't really need community. I'm comfortable. And I was saying that might be true for you, but maybe your kids, like, are your kids all introverts? And she was like, no, they really aren't. They want to get out. And I'm like, okay, so I know that's hard, but if your kids are not introverts and they want community, then you can give it to them and you can balance it and figure out what that looks like. So you're not burnt out because there may be too much community, but you can give them some. And so connection matters because we're constantly relocating. We need to be in community, and it may not be a co-op because as I say that, I hear people telling me, I don't do co-ops. I don't like co-ops. Co-ops have never worked for my family. So I'm not really even suggesting a co-op. It could be something else, but connection matters. And so it's super important to find that and figure that out. And so how do you do that, right? How do you find support groups if you're always relocating? Well, we know online just goes wherever you are, but those ones that are in person, it's hard to leave. Like I think many a military spouse, many a military family, not just homeschooling ones, have cried many tears over like having to leave dear people that you love. And your kids are like, I don't want to do this. Do we have to keep moving? And you're figuring out how as a mom to like show that real brave, courageous front that, yeah, we're going to move and we're going to be okay. Meanwhile, outside, you may be thinking, I don't think we're going to be okay. Or this is not going to work, right? And so I know how hard that is. And so now you have to do it again. You have to find support group again. You have to find the co-op maybe. You have to find the actual support group. You have to find maybe what some places call homeschool tutorials. You have to find the next opportunity for your kids, whatever that is. And so how do you find them? A lot of these have social media presence. And so you may not be on social media, like you could be watching us on LinkedIn now. You could be watching us on our YouTube channel. I get that. And so I do tell families or moms maybe that aren't on like social media, don't really do Facebook. You can be on Facebook and just look for the things you need. You don't have to like live on Facebook to have a Facebook account, right? So I tell families establish a Facebook account for the things you want to hear about. So it could be your local co-op is on Facebook, or it could be that you're using it to find a co-op or a support group. Just use it for what you need, right? Because they do have a lot of presence online on social media. So, and they have websites, but it seems like you can have more engagement quicker on social media. So there's that. Also, check your spouse's clubs, right? Your spouse groups, and say, "Hey, anyone homeschooling?" And I see that all the time, and I laugh because, yeah, like thousands of us are homeschooling, but you don't know, especially someone beginning to homeschool, feels like they're the only ones making that choice. Like they're stepping into the desert and they're like, oh no, I'm the only one, right? But no, there's thousands. So reach out and just ask that simple question, right? Now, how do you build that support system with frequent moves? Well, some of the support system is family that you probably aren't going to be living near. So there's that. But the rest of the support system, I think, tends to be a lot of other homeschoolers. And maybe your homeschool bestie, maybe one or two, right? And it could be somebody in your church support system. It could be somebody that if your kids play a sport and you see them practice every week in a game, and that's your support system. So just build the support system. And you don't have to have anyone in your support system that you don't want in your support system. Like you don't have to have naysayers. Like you don't want to surround yourself by people who are like, why are you choosing to do that? Like I wouldn't do that. Or my kids drive me crazy. I can't stand to be around them. That's not going to help you. That's not going to edify you and encourage you, right? Separate from personally, I should say, I find something wrong with that. But anyway, having said that, that's neither here nor there. Definitely you want to find that. And so it's really important to figure out what does that look like. And again, how do you contribute to and how do you benefit from homeschool communities? So I am going to get on my soapbox and say, having led groups, and I know Jessica, where you are, you're getting things going there in Charleston, right? And Ashley, you're doing some things there. And a lot of our board is in leadership of groups and or has led. And so like we want people to contribute. We want people to say, I see what you're doing and I appreciate it and I want to help. And it could look like this little bit of help or a whole lot. Really, just raise your hand and contribute because I always say it benefits not just your kids, right? It benefits other people's kids. And that's super important. That's amazing modeling for our own children to understand that we coexist with other homeschoolers and community is super important. And we get to choose to be a part of it to make community even better, not just for our family, but for others. And so I think that's really important. So hopefully that has helped a little bit about getting connected and building that homeschool village. We could probably talk about this topic on and on. I know that you may have some questions. I know there were some questions that were pre-submitted. And if you have any and you're watching now and you want to put some in the comments, if they show up here, I will feature them on our screen if I can. I think I can do that. Let's see here. So we had a couple of questions that came in. So we had one that asked about tips for organization boxes for each child. Kimberly Williams asked that on our Facebook page, I think. Hello, Kimberly, if you see watching later. Is it important to keep papers from elementary school? And how much of your child's curriculum do you keep from previous years? So let's start with tips for organization boxes for each child. Anyone want to jump in and answer that one?
Yeah, I mean, so I kind of touched on it a little bit. As far as organizing, some people choose to show that growth, right? So you keep a couple work samples for the beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year. I hope that's what you're talking about when you are talking about the boxes. I think that's what I have in mind is work samples. But so that's how some people do it. Again, I am a little bit more conservative with my choice and I only have one child. So I also have I guess the privilege of being a little overzealous with my documentation. And I literally have a box with everything, for kindergarten and first and second. For me, that just feels better because we are still very much in the moving part of our life. So if we move to a state that is a little more strict, I can literally show you everything, but I understand that that is not the norm and you don't have to do that. As long as you're keeping some samples, a binder like Ashley suggested is great. I keep a storage box, just a small one for each grade, with my little student planner, and that works really well for me. Do you guys have anything to add for the organization aspect?
You know, for us, we have portfolios for each of our kids.
Mhm.
And we are just entering into the high school year, so we will have report cards now. I did not keep grades up until sixth grade. We've just kept samples of their work. We have the art, the notebooks that I had told you
Mhm.
about. There's a company, and I think I can try to link it after the show, but there's a company that does homeschool planners, but they
Mhm.
also have books that have first grade, fifth grade, and those books, you know, the notebooks. And I
Yeah.
think that would be a really cool thing to do to keep a portfolio of your kiddos' work, because they can, you know, cut things out and glue or tape in there, and then they have their own scrapbook of their homeschool years. Another thing for us, because we are EFMP and we have PT, OT, and speech
Mhm.
intermixed, is I have a binder, and our binder has grown over the years. We had one big binder of just medical and IFSPs, all of those things. And then now, because we are older, we have a medical record binder, we have an EFMP binder, and then we also have a eval binder. And our eval binder has all of our evals from physical therapists, speech pathologists, occupational therapists. It has his IFSP from way back when. So if we were ever to move where they would need a copy of that, or it's even for us to see where our goals were and now where they are. Um, you know, you can keep all of the curriculum, but if you are more of an unschooler or reverse planner, it's more of a scrapbook or a record of goals, really. So I can look I think it's great that both of us are on right now, Jessica, because it seems like we're both so different in how we we see. This is great. This is proof that it all works, right?
Yeah,
Exactly right. Yeah.
that's what I was thinking. Is proof right here. Excuse me.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's and Natalie, you've graduated all of your kids. So how did you keep
Oh,
records?
don't remind me. I'm crying. No, actually, I was choking over here. But uh, yeah, so different things over the years. Literally, organization was an ongoing thing. And like you said, how much space do we have to really organize the way maybe I wanted to do it versus the reality? And so, and then Kimberly also asked you all, is it important to keep papers from elementary? And we have a few other questions that have come in, so I want to feature those as well. And so I kept a lot of elementary stuff, not because I thought someone was going to need to see it, just because I wanted to see it. And then one day, I came home and my husband and son had decided they're going to clean out the shed and the Rubbermaids, and some of that kind of was on going out the door. And so I was a little upset about it, but I realized that what am I going to do with all of that, right? And I would say to the kids, "Oh, do you want this?" Like the grown kids, right? "Oh, this was when you were printing and coloring," and they're like, "Wow," like, "No, I don't want it." I'm thinking, when you get older, you're gonna say, "Oh, I wish I would have kept it," but they laugh. So I don't know. I think it's just up to you. Like, no one is going to ask to see those papers, unless you are going to segue back into brick and mortar school, like public or private, and they may ask for that previous year's work. Um, if they accept your child back in, that's a whole nother decision, right? That's a whole nother discussion for another time. That's not automatically guaranteed. So, especially if they get to high school, but for elementary, I think it's really kind of decide what you're going to do. If you're homeschooling for the long haul, I don't know. It's up to you if you want to keep it or not, I think. And the same with her other question, how much of your child's curriculum do you keep from previous years? I think I just answered that. So I want to go to her next question and then I want to feature the other ones. Thanks everyone for joining us. I appreciate it. She said each state has different homeschool laws. This is Kimberly Williams again. Each state has different homeschool laws. So how do you prove being military that you were in what state at what time? And so specifically, I think her question also was about timing due to state laws on testing. And so I'll put a disclaimer out here, not being an attorney, we do have another organization that, you can contact and reach out to ask specific legal questions. But this is my understanding over the years is that if you are moving to another state and you are arriving mid-year, then you do have to follow whatever their end of year requirements are. But if you are arriving, say, in May, June, July, typically those times, which is when a lot of PCS happens anyway, then you just need to go ahead and start that next year. So if you arrive to a state like here in Virginia and someone says, oh, you have to submit tests and you arrive mid-May or something, you don't have to submit the test. That's my understanding. But I also, in addition to recommending you consider reaching out to HSLDA, you can also reach out to your state org. And they are the ones that I always refer people to and ask those kinds of questions about what the timing needs to look like for testing. And do I need to test? I just arrived, I'm military. Do I need to test? What do I need to do at this point in time? But I think I'm right because I've asked this question before of other states. So, but just do your homework on that. And so I'm going to segue down so you all can hear these questions as well. Oh, Marissa says baking is our favorite kind of math. So she's gone to the cookies. I think it's everybody's favorite. Okay, and here we have a question from Amanda Schreiner. Amanda, I'm not sure if you're still on. She says, absolutely, rather she didn't have a question. She says, absolutely, I love homeschooling with our community. So super awesome. And I know it can be adjustment for people who maybe are more introverted and hesitant about it, right? But I think community is good, even a little bit. And so here we have a next one from Reina Hernandez. Says ADHD and autism homeschooling. What curriculum is doable for kindergarten? You wanna try this one, Miss Ashley? I know.
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
without naming a specific curriculum, because
Right.
we've said, what works for us is probably not going to work for everybody else. I would say again, reiterate the fact that the curriculum is not the master. You are the master of your homeschool. Think about the things that you maybe need in that moment. I always tell people that are starting to homeschool, lots of really, really good books for your kiddos. And if they don't sit still or they don't love to sit and listen like you would think that they would, if they don't love to listen to a book, get them jumping on a trampoline and listen to an audio book. Or, a fidget spinner or a sensory table. I think a lot of the times our perception is we have to sit and attend, right? We all have to just listen to the teacher. And we know I love listening to a good audiobook while I'm doing the dishes in the evening. And I think that's true for our little ones as well, as they might need busy hands so their brain can listen to what you're saying. So even though they might not be listening, read, and play.
Yes.
And they will get more than what you think they're getting. I think that's the biggest thing for kindergarten is read and play.
Read and play. Yeah. And it might seem too simple, but it really is that simple. It really is that
And,
simple. So
and
yes,
reverse
it really is
plan.
that
Think about
simple.
what you do all day long. Don't have a
Yeah,
plan. Just enjoy that kiddo and write down what you do every day. And you'd be surprised after a month of doing that what you actually learn.
exactly. And also kids that maybe say kids that may not appear to be paying attention actually typically are, right?
Mhm.
Like, for example, a child that maybe is upside down on the sofa or, seems to be fiddling with things, you can read and say, hey, what did I just read about? Most of them will tell you,
Mhm.
actually, right? So, this idea that they have to sit straight and be like this, I mean, I think they can grow into being an adult who does pretty well with that, but it's a growing into process. It's not something that you have to mandate right now, right? As a homeschooling parent, you are more focused on, I think personally, a love for learning and a confidence in being able to learn at whatever level they are. So that's just my
And
thing. But I have a whole
Yeah.
lot of
to
things.
add to that is game schooling. Remember, you
Yeah,
can play games.
yes,
You know,
game schooling.
sight words, slap the bug with the sight word on it, jump to find that sight word. I mean, I think, or math facts. I think as kindergartners, their brains are so spongy that you can get them to learn anything in a game. Learn the
Yes,
planets by,
gamifying
you
the
know,
lesson.
Yes,
Yes.
so true, so true.
yes.
I love it. I
And
love
also,
it.
just to kind of add in, going back to community, and Raina's question about what curriculum works best. And again, we don't know your particular child, but find some communities, find some parents that are homeschooling children that have ADHD or have autism. What's working for them? And
Mhm.
investigate from there, because that's where you're going to really get like, well, my child does this and this is what worked for us. And you're going to get those tips that maybe we haven't even thought about, right? Because that's not our reality. But I mean, going back to what Ashley said, my 10-year-old still has to jump on the trampoline when I'm reading aloud for history, because if not, his eyes will glaze over. And that's
Yeah,
okay, right? It doesn't
yeah,
have to be table work.
yeah,
He can color, he can do Play-Doh. We've done flexible seating. We've done a lot of things that I'm like, oh man, if you were having to sit still during this would look a whole lot different. But he's getting it, like Natalie said, right? Like if I asked him, who were we talking about, he can name who the who the story was about and what happened. It's going to look a little bit different
Mhm.
than what the expectations are, and that's okay.
I love it. It is okay, definitely. So I think our time has come to an end. This has been an amazing webinar. I so appreciate Jessica and Ashley joining me today. Thank you for all of you all who came in and viewed, and thank you for the replay watchers. We love you as well. Please comment #replay. Let us know that you watched. Let us know if the content is meeting your needs. And if you have any questions, we'll be sure to come back and respond. Thank you so very, very much. I really appreciate it. And Marissa, who's behind the scenes managing the comments, thank you very, very much. So we're going to go ahead and say good night, everyone, and look for future webinars. And we have amazing partnerships and resources. So you need to make sure you tune in. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.